name is Fiona McCarthy. I am a journalist and author, and with me is the wonderful Nikki Snell from Loft.
Hi, everyone.
And Emma Morton-Turner, founder of Inside Stylists.
Inside Stylists,
Inside Stylists. Sorry, Em. And we're just going to talk to you about the best ways to get press for your brand, which is really hard. I appreciate being a journalist, getting hundreds of emails every day, how hard it is for you to discern and stand out so I actually take any notice. Nicola's business is all about imagery and helping brands communicate. And then obviously, Emma, you're on the other side doing the visuals, helping brands communicate. So what we thought we would break it down into 5 things, and they'll come up on the screen so you get an idea of what we're talking about for each bit if you forget. But I just wanted to do a quick little intro as well, just to say welcome to Retail Fest by Top Drawer and to our panel talking about how to get your design-led brand in the press. It's really lovely for us to be here. We will stay afterwards so you can come and talk to us rather than doing an open Q&A, so please don't be shy. Do come up and ask anything if you haven't heard what you were hoping you would hear from us during it. So the first thing that we would suggest is targeting publications that are right for your brand. And I know it sounds a bit like a no-brainer, but actually it's quite specific and very important that you really know who you're going to be talking to. Sending out a random email to 100 people that actually don't ever look at what you specialize in will just go in the junk folder or the bin. So it's very important how you would discern who you're going to target to. Nicola, what would you suggest to people about how they do that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing you absolutely have to do is really obvious, but just read the publications that you want to be in and really get to know them. And it's not just a case of, oh, pick up living, etc. I know it writes about interiors. It's what are each of the pages that they write and where would I fit into. And so that's a really important part, is just reading and getting to know the journalist themselves, not just the publication. So I've said this before and someone said it, gentle stalking is what you need to do. You need to follow them on Instagram, follow them on Twitter where possible if they're visible. Do comment that you've read something that they've written about before. This is what will make you stand out. This is often why people hire a PR agency and don't do it themselves. They have those amazing relationships with the journalists, but that would be your job. If you can't afford a PR agency, then you would be looking to cultivate a relationship, which is very different to spamming someone with a random press release.
What about you, Emma? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I've been stalked. And I've been bombarded as well. So I'm an interior stylist and writer, so I receive the press releases, I receive the emails that people send quite randomly, and it doesn't work. I think we were just talking earlier before we came up here, I get about 100, 150 emails a day, so it's really hard to go through that and keep on top of everything, and it's very easy to just clear your inbox because you haven't got time. So it's essential to approach the right person. Also, it's worth mentioning that there are a lot of freelancers out there, so it's not just the staff on magazines. The staff on magazines has reduced over the years, and now they hire freelancers all the time, and they are people who are in the magazine as well. So when you're looking at the people who've done the features or they're doing the shoots, take a note of them, and they'll definitely be on Instagram and gently stalk them too.
Yeah, and actually not just Instagram, but Twitter's a really, really great source to research journalists. So if you type in the publication name, not even their handle, but just the publication name into Twitter, you will get a list of all the people whose bios contain the word of that publication. That does also pick up the freelancers that work for Elle Decor or Living, etc., or wherever. So that's another. Twitter's brilliant for journalist research.
Yeah. Except that I'm not on Twitter,
Me
so
neither.
That's a bit useless for me, isn't it? I better get on it. What I find. So Emma's very much interiors, and so she would Google something like a chair. I do actually work across a lot of things, but even PR agencies get it wrong. Someone will target me about a story they think would be really great for Times Lux, for instance, and actually I can tell they haven't even looked at Times Lux, because whilst it's a great story, and I understand why they think it's a great story and they want to promote that person that they're talking about, actually there's no profile in that magazine that it would suit. So it's frustrating because you have to go back and explain that to them. It would be much better if they'd really looked at the magazine, really looked at what stories would in there, often you can't justify just one story on one person anymore. So in fact, if you know that you're doing something, say socks, let's just say socks, and you notice that two other people are doing really interesting socks, then actually that can help if you think about where you might fit in into the magazine and what they're looking for, and then actually maybe suggest other people as well at the same time. So that really helps, doesn't it? So that leads us into getting personal. And Nicola, you had some good bits about how to make it really personal to that person rather than just generic mail out.
So do you mean about the trends and hooking things into trends on that one?
Well, becoming familiar with those people, yes, hooking into trends.
Yeah,
and also what would be interesting from your perspective receiving emails and from your perspective sending emails, how you actually then present that.
Yeah. So I think there's one thing, just one thing to say. It sounds really intimidating doing PR, and like you might piss off a journalist and no one wants to do that. And on the whole, when you've got it right, people really do want to hear from you. And I think that's one thing that really is important to take away, is that journalists want to hear from small brands. They don't just want to hear from high street, big, anonymous brands. They want to hear from you. So, you know, once you've done your research, be confident that you have a story to tell. Just one of the ways that you can tell the story is by using hooks and angles and just knowing what a journalist is likely to be writing about right now. And I think you'd agree that trends are a really important part of making your product relevant. So if it was socks, for example, you know, you want to be thinking about, well, journalists are probably writing about Mother's Day right now, or they're writing about Father's Day, or then going into Christmas. So you use that hook and make sure that that's in your press release title, which is the subject heading of your email. I've got a little formula that we follow. So it's so if it's new, mention the fact that it's new in the title. Make sure the product type is in the title, and also the hook, so the season or the Mother's Day gifting or Valentine's, or one of the big trends that's out there. So it's just a really simple formula, and you don't have to be a really sophisticated writer. That's the journalist job.
So what would you say, like hot new planters for spring?
I wouldn't even put the word hot in there.
Okay.
I just literally new planters for spring 22. I mean, really super simple. And if they were Nordic planters or concrete planters, I would also mention that, because concrete's quite trendy, or Nordic's quite trendy. Make sure that that word is in there too, to just bring it all together, but not be overly wordy, because you're so busy. You know, you guys get so many emails. You don't want all this fluff and like fancy words. You want it to be quite to the point, so that when you do come back to it, you can do a quick search and go, oh, planters, yeah, that's what I'm doing today. Right, I can find that email and that press release.
And so for you with Press Loft, maybe explain to everyone a little bit about what you do and how that also can help.
Yeah, so this is quite a different way of doing PR. So traditionally you do your research, you pitch to the journalist, and then you're asked, can you then send me your image? We kind of automate a lot of that process to a degree, and we put it in the journalist's hands. So as brands, you would upload all your content, your images, your high-res images to Press Loft, and we have a massive network of media like yourselves who are looking for new products to feature, and so they do a quick search on Press Loft and find the relevant images and download them to feature. So we kind of automate a lot of the PR, and we work with like startup brands right the way through to massive multinationals, and we sort of put them all on the same platform, so they're all equally found.
And also you do send regular emails saying hot new trend or colour theory or something, so that also helps draw people towards, doesn't it?
So we curate the right images at the right time and present them to the journalists to really drive the coverage for clients, as well as sending out press releases as well.
What works for you, Emma, when somebody's trying to get your attention? What are the things that work?
I think you touched on something really interesting, in that we don't just look for the bigger brands. It's really important, and it's a really big thing at the moment, to kind of source locally from within the UK, and small independent brands give you, like, they're really inspirational. You want products that aren't seen before. You want the reader, when you're putting a feature together, you want to put something that the reader hasn't seen before, because that means that magazine is going to make them buy it again, because they just want to be inspired all the time. So small independent brands are really good. But you're right, the more fluff in a subject line in an email, I quite often will look on my phone. If I'm on the train and I'm thinking my email's massive, I'm going to get it down, I will look at the title, and if I don't think it's relevant, I get a lot of property emails, and I don't do anything to do with property, I'm interiors, I'll just swipe through. So if the email subject line isn't specific, like, I think what you're saying is really interesting, that it might not be something I'm looking for now, but I'll open it so that when I search later on for chairs or socks or whatever, it will come up. So I think it's absolutely spot on. I haven't got time to sit and read every single email. So get to the point.
And on that note as well, so we've got everybody thinking about their target publications and the people that, and it's not just a magazine that you might love and you wish you were in it. You have to also think about who your customer is and also understand how a publication, so whether it's, say, a newspaper supplement as opposed to British Vogue. British Vogue is really lovely, looks amazing, very prestigious, actually doesn't sell a lot off the page. If you go to a supplement or one of the more shopping friendly, say Red, Living, etc., you will sell a lot more. So you've got to think also about what sort of story you want to tell and what you want to achieve from it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being in British Vogue, let me tell you, but you might not get you might not get sales, but you might suddenly have a profile lift and people go, oh, that's really interesting what they're doing. They clock it, they keep it with it, and they might investigate, they might not. If you really just want to sell stuff, then understand those publications that will do that for you. The other thing is that diversity at the moment obviously is a very key word, and that isn't just about sort of background, but it might be about different genders, it might be different family connections, it might be where you came from, the inspirations that you're channeling, and I personally like to know about the people behind things. That's what I do. I write about people. I won't write about the latest handbag, but I'd write about the person who made it. I wouldn't write about a new building. I'd write about the architect who designed it. So I like to know about who people are. And if you have a lovely little story, like you're working out of your studio on a farm, I want to know that. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it could just be maybe a little line at the end about. So I was going to say that actually a really good email is really important as well. And I can't believe sometimes I get an email and there's no visuals on it at all, or they want you to download a WeTransfer link, or you have to email them back to ask for imagery. So what would you suggest in terms of how you lay those out? And I know we were talking earlier, is it a PDF or is it one of those mail shots where you've got it embedded? And how would somebody do that?
So, yeah, I think with the images in the press release, so I think going back to the personalisation, you can put a short personal intro at the top of the press release within the email, just to give it a little bit more personality. I think that's really worth doing. Do you think that works when someone's done, oh, hi Fiona, I think that you might like this, or do you just like to get straight in there to the press release?
Well, I mean, if you can be really targeted, then if somebody says, I've seen that you wrote about this recently and you wrote about that, so you obviously love people's stories and this would be really great. If not, then definitely never start with, hi gorgeous, or hey ya, or anything that's overly familiar. The beauty world is very guilty of that. And the minute it's, hey, gorgeous, it's deleted immediately.
I'm so emailing you now.
Yeah. And also, if you're going to do a mail shot, please make sure that you really get it right. So that don't send it to me, but say, dear Lily.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Because that will also go in the bin. It's hard to be really targeted. But actually, if you can get hold of somebody's email, and as we just said, you find 5 amazing publications, and you email those 5 people because you've really sussed out what they're into, then they will be very touched if you flatter them a little bit and say, I really loved your story on this, I really loved that. They will pay attention, without doubt. And I do get people contacting me via Instagram. Instagram, as you said, Twitter, but Instagram is a very good way of sussing out what people do. Sadly, not all journalists are very good at posting so much. You sort of expect them to have thousands of followers and some of them don't, but don't let that put you off. Doesn't mean that they're not there and they're not engaging. It might not be their thing. But I do get direct messages, but again, it has to be, I will respond if somebody says, we noticed you did this, we know, you have a background in this, and then I will respond and I will give them my email address. But again, if it's one of those things like, we'd really like to send you product because we think our product's really fabulous, I won't respond. And I think humility is really important. Never ever email someone saying this is the best product that ever existed, because that person who receives 150 emails will say, I've seen 3 others better than that already this morning. So you have to be very humble. You have to be very sort of gentle in the way you sort of say, I would really love you to experience this or understand this more. We're very proud of it. Be very positive in your words, but don't go in sort of going, this is the best thing you'll ever see, because it probably might not be, but it might be a great little story behind it that nobody else has. So we were talking about...
Yeah, I got
sorry, I've got
waylaid
complete anyway.
about personalising press releases, which is ideally one-to-one.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's the ultimate, but no, not everyone's got time to do that unless you're very targeted with your research. So if you're going to send out press releases, then using mail merge or just not putting the intro is okay.
Yeah.
Then going back to the images, so you'd put low resolution images into the email, but ideally link out straight away to somewhere they can download them. So Dropbox or Google Drive, or if you're on Press Loft, all of our press releases go out with the links automatically to the high res images. It's just about, you just got to put yourself into a journalist mindset that they are so busy and they're never ever been more busy with budgets being cut. So you've just got to make their life as easy as possible, and you are more likely to get featured.
Yeah, which actually leads us into another point that we had, which is about actually the way publications work now. There are much less staff, there's a lot more demand, and if you make it easy, you will find that maybe you just might end up on that page the next week because it was easy for them to do. And but you also have to understand, Abby's just put the thing up that reminded me, understanding lead times is really important as well. Long term, so the glossies, some of them work sometimes 6 months ahead. That's excessive. But on the whole, are definitely thinking 4 months ahead, even if it doesn't go to actual print press 2 months ahead. So you have to be very mindful of those trends, those seasons, and then also newspapers, they have shorter lead times, but if it's going to be a big feature like Christmas or Easter or Mother's Day, they will have started thinking about that at least 6 to 8 weeks before. And bloggers, I know they're a little bit shorter, but they still do think and plan, don't they? They just don't whip something up the next day. What is important for you when you're advising clients that are coming to Press Loft?
It is exactly that. I mean, the amount of times that we get approached in December by someone with the most beautiful bauble or Christmas gift saying, right, I really want to do PR, and you're like, oh my gosh, if you just started a few months ago, you would have just absolutely killed it. You'd have been absolutely everywhere. So timing is absolutely essential. I've put out some of these trend booklets that we've done. In the back of there's a calendar which helps you plan your PR. If there's not enough available, we're over on stand next to the press office, which is over there, and we've got tons more, but it just helps you plan out your PR with those key dates and the lead times in mind. Timing is everything, I would say. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as a stylist and a writer, I will plan commercial shoots for Christmas starting March. I will shoot them in June. In July, we've got Christmas in July, when most brands get their products out so everyone knows what's coming, because most magazines will work on Christmas issues August, September. By mid-September, they're pretty much gone. So if you're not getting stuff out early enough, then it's going to be missed. There are weekly magazines, newspapers, blogs, those sorts of things that are closer. But like, I plan like 4 months ahead for my blog, but I can be working on a number of different things at any one time. Like, I'll be working on Christmas and a magazine feature for in a couple of months, and then now, all at the same time. So you do want to hear all the information, but yeah, the earlier you get it, the more it gets stored away, ready for... You remember when you see something spectacular and you want to go, oh, I've got to make sure I feature that, and then you remember it.
I know this isn't in Abby's order, sorry Abby, but I actually thought we should talk about imagery first before we talk about the last point, which is the importance of investing in imagery. And Emma can obviously talk to us a lot about that as well. But for you and for me, having lifestyle imagery that's been really beautifully shot saves a lot of people a lot of money. And they might just actually, it might inspire a whole feature about something that you might never have thought you'd get featured in. So for you, what do you look for and what do you advise people to do?
Yeah, so there's two sides to it. So with the cutouts on a pure white background, they get about 60% of the coverage that we get on pressed Loft and just with any clients that we work with.
And should we explain what a cutout is?
So it's an image on a pure white background. It's not the background that it's shot on, even if it's almost pure white. It needs to be removed from the background on a perfect white background, and then that can go into get the looks. So, replicating a look and style of a home, or a gift guide as well. They're perfect for them. They're quite easy to shoot. Be really careful on lighting. Lighting's really difficult to get right yourself, but there's plenty of tutorials about that, I would say. And then 40% now made up by lifestyle photography. Now that's changed. It used to be about 70-80% cutouts, and it's now way more lifestyles because the budgets are cut. There are fewer editorial shoots now, so that means that any commercial shoots that you're doing for your business are more likely to make bigger features in publications, and this is where your styling work really comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you suggest to somebody to do?
I think things that were coming up when you were talking there, I was thinking things like quite often people will brands will take photos themselves, and they have to be aware of things like they need to be high enough res. So to appear in print, it has to be 300 dpi. If I'm scrolling through Pressloft to look for images that a brand has shot themselves and they're not light enough, or the styling isn't right, or it's just the whole composition isn't right, I won't even consider it. It has to be to a high enough level for a magazine. If I'm working on independent magazines and they have a look, it's not that you have to style to that specific magazine, but you have to be at that standard. It can't look like it's been shot in your office with the lights turned on and that sort of thing. Yeah. Styling is essential. And the reason we're hired as stylists is because we are trained to style for inspiration, but to make a product the hero. I was just doing a little styling workshop downstairs, and I was saying that you have to be able to look at a shot and know exactly what the product is that you're supposed to be looking at. It could be a whole room and the sofa might be the product, but everything else has to complement it, but the sofa is what you want to be looking at, and that is a learned thing.
And also that it's not a waste of money to invest in that just for press, because actually you can then use it on your social media platforms. I always look, if somebody emails me about something I'm interested in, then I go and look at their Instagram feed to see what sort of imagery they have, what sort of quality they are, what voice they have in the way they write about it. It completely changes your perspective on whether you might feature them or not. And if they do look like they've only got 2 followers and they're not really getting it right, then I'm a reader's service. I'm not going to suggest something that I feel like they'll let the person down who goes and shops from them. So I have to trust that they are good enough that we would want to feature them. So it's worth investing in, even if it's on a lower, you don't have to spend tens of thousands, but it's worth it, because then you can use it to tell your story, and telling your story is the most important bit of all.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I look at where I was styling 10 years ago, it's very different from where we are now. I now will stylist shoot, and whereas previously we would shoot for magazines in portrait, we now do a lot of landscape. We do shots that can be used landscape on a website. We'll try and get a portrait out for editorial use, and we'll try and have it squared off for Instagram. So from one setup, we'll try and tick a lot of boxes, and that is the norm now. People shoot for editorial and commercial use, but they also have it for social media use. So you cover all bases. And it's like, if you see the difference between a picture you take with your own very nice digital, camera, to a professional photographer who spends 40 grand on there, the lighting is just way above anything you could do yourself.
And there is nothing wrong if you're very good at taking beautiful pictures on your iPhone. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to understand that won't necessarily work in a glossy magazine, which, as you said, needs a very, 300 dpi is the minimum. It would be better if it was more higher quality than that, particularly if somebody's going to use it as what we would call full bleed, which is a whole page. Then the quality has to be really good.
Yeah, I was going to say, what you shoot on a camera to what you shoot on your phone are different. The JPEG and the RAW file, you can't use a picture taken from your phone in a magazine, because it will never be high enough quality.
No, definitely not. So, sorry, Abby, we'll go back to number 4. which actually we've sort of covered, but I think we could cover a little bit more, is that getting what you're doing standing out. So whether it's a season, it's a holiday, or I think that you can be very aware of what's going on in the actual daily press and noticing what's happening and being very in tune with. Somebody might write a property story about an increase in needing spa-like bathrooms. Being on top of things like that and then understanding where you fit in, and even the catwalk. So London Fashion Week's on at the moment, and the colours are deep, proper, what would you call them, block solid colours. Yeah. So if you're doing something that actually you're doing stools in cobalt blue and you're doing cushions in hot pink, you are completely of the moment, and that would be a really great time to email people, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in that booklet there, we round up trends, and we do that on the site all the time because that's so important. And colour trends are always our biggest trends by far because they're so visual by default. They're so visual, and products can, if you fit into a colour trend, make sure that colour trend is in the title of the press release. You know, that's what you as journalists will be looking at hopefully at that time, and it's just all about keeping up just generally with what's going on, like you say, particularly on colours. So Pantone Colour of the Year is really big. In December that's launched. WGSN sometimes do Colours of the Year, and yeah, just see what's at the trade shows as well. You some great trends here that you could hook your products into and do press releases on.
Yeah, if you're noticing that suddenly there's hundreds of stories in the newspapers about growing dahlias for the summer, and you do flower prints, and you happen to have a dahlia print, voila. You know, it's about being very tuned in and really thinking about it. And I know it's hard, but be brave. Really stand up for what you're proud of. What you're doing, you're working very hard. This is your livelihood, and be proud of it and stand up for it. But just definitely tell your story. So if we recapped the key things, did you want to do your recap? Is there a recap one? No. Targeting publications. How many do you think? 10? 4?
As many as you can. The more you target, the more likelihood is you're going to get picked at that one time. But realistically, if you're going to do one-to-one PR, you can only really do 10, 20 publications tops. If you're going to do it en masse, then you can go way bigger than that.
Yeah. Getting personal. So knowing the person you're targeting, but also knowing the story you're trying to tell and how that publication would understand how they would help you tell your story and how it helps them. Then understanding lead times, very important. And as you said, there's a calendar in there, which is great. Aligning to trends and hot topics. What are other things, Emma, that you sometimes look for?
I think it's interesting what you were saying about fashion earlier, because like interior trends follow fashion, and there's quite a lot of I mean, Living Etc. has been doing it for ages. They do a catwalk image and then interiors products around that. And other I mean, House Beautiful is doing it now. Lots of them are doing it. So paying attention to that is really important. But yeah, it's always about making sure that the title is really clear. Yeah, and just keeping on top of what's going on.
Yeah. And then investing in great imagery. And
hire stylists.
Yeah, hire stylists. She's after a job. But yeah, you can. And obviously you can give advice on that as well.
Yeah.
But being just savvy about your imagery, and I realise not everybody can afford that, but it's definitely worth it if you can make it work across lots of different platforms. And also invest in good storytelling. Do really think about how you write and what you say and your language and your grammar. Don't post anything that hasn't been spelt check and you checked your apostrophes and everything, because journalists will also notice that. And ultimately, make sure that they know that you're a real person, because that's the important thing, and that's what we're all looking for, is that we want to tell people's stories as much as product stories. So, as I said, we're going to be around for a little bit. We might not have covered everything you'd like to know, so please come and talk to us. Don't be shy. And hopefully that gave you some insight into what to do. And thank you very much for being at Retail Fest at Top Drawer.